The rain was pounding against the windows as I settled into the cozy armchair, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows across the room. I was babysitting for the Johnsons, a sweet family with 2 adorable kids, fast asleep upstairs. Just as I was about to lose myself in a book, the phone rang, shattering the peaceful silence of the house. I hesitated for a moment before picking up the receiver, wondering who could be calling at this hour. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the unease creeping over me. Static crackled on the line for a moment before a low, raspy voice spoke. "Check on the children," it whispered, sending a chill down my spine. My heart began to race as I glanced towards the staircase, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. "Who is this?" I demanded, but there was only silence on the other end of the line. Shaking off the sense of foreboding that hung in the air, I hurried upstairs to check on the kids. They were sleeping soundly in their beds, their chests rising and falling in a gentle rhythm. Relieved, I made my way back downstairs, trying to push the strange phone call from my mind. But just as I settled back into the armchair, the phone rang again, its shrill ring cutting through the silence like a knife. With trembling hands, I picked up the receiver once more, steeling myself for whatever ominous message awaited me. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. This time there was no static, no raspy voice, just heavy breathing sending shivers down my spine. "Get out of the house," a voice finally hissed, icy and menacing. Panic surged through me as I realized that the calls were coming from inside the house. With a racing heart, I bolted for the front door, desperate to escape the danger that lurked within. As I fumbled with the lock, the sound of footsteps echoed behind me, growing closer with each passing moment. With one final twist of the key, I threw open the door and fled into the stormy night, the cold rain soaking me to the bone. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of a neighbor's house, where I collapsed on the doorstep, gasping for breath. It was only then that I dared to look back at the Johnsons' house, fear still gripping my heart. But there was no sign of anyone following me, no dark figure lurking in the shadows. And yet the memory of those chilling phone calls would haunt me for years to come, a reminder of the night I narrowly escaped the man upstairs. The night was quiet, the only sound being the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. I was babysitting for the Smiths, a lovely couple with a newborn baby who slept soundly in the crib. As I sat on the couch, idly flipping through a magazine, the phone rang, startling me out of my reverie. I glanced at the caller ID, but it showed only a string of unfamiliar numbers. With a shrug, I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was no response, only silence on the other end of the line. I frowned, about to hang up when a voice finally spoke, so faint I could barely hear it. "Check on the baby," it whispered, sending a shiver down my spine. My heart pounding, I rushed to the nursery, my footsteps echoing in the silent house. The baby was still sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Confused, I returned to the living room, the phone still clutched in my hand. Just as I was about to hang up, the voice spoke again, louder this time, but still barely more than a whisper. "Stay with the baby," it commanded, sending a chill down my spine. Fear gnawed at me as I glanced around the darkened room, my mind racing with thoughts of intruders and danger lurking in the shadows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that I needed to protect the baby at all costs. With a trembling hand, I reached for the phone, about to call the police, when a noise from the hallway made me freeze. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing in the silence of the house. Panic surged through me as I realized that someone was inside the house with us, someone who had been watching and waiting in the darkness. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that the calls were coming from within the house itself. Heart pounding, I scooped up the baby and fled to the nursery, locking the door behind me. Trembling with fear, I huddled in the corner, holding the baby close as the sound of footsteps grew closer and closer. But just as I feared the worst, the door burst open, flooding the room with light. It was the Smiths returning home early from their night out. With tears streaming down my face, I handed them the baby, babbling about the mysterious phoner calls and the intruder in the house. But when they checked the phone, There were no records of any incoming calls, no evidence that anyone had been watching or waiting in the darkness. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there, someone who had whispered warnings in the silence of the night. The evening was calm, the gentle hum of the city outside providing a soothing backdrop to my babysitting duties for the Thompsons, a family with 2 lively children. As I sat at the kitchen table, helping the kids with their homework, the doorbell rang, echoing through the house. Curious, I made my way to the front door, wondering who could be visiting at this hour. But when I opened the door, there was no one there, just an envelope lying on the welcome mat. Puzzled, I picked up the envelope and opened it, revealing a handwritten note inside. "Check the attic," it read, the words scrawled hastily, as if by someone in a hurry. My heart skipped a beat as I glanced towards the staircase leading up to the attic, a place I had never ventured before, but curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to investigate. Leaving the kids in the care of their toys, I made my way up the creaky stairs to the attic, the air thick with dust and nostalgia. As I reached the top, I noticed a small door tucked away in the corner, almost hidden from view. With trembling hands, I pushed open the door and stepped into the dimly lit attic, the musty smell of old belongings filling my nostrils, and that's when I saw it lying in the corner amidst a pile of forgotten memories, an old invitation, yellowed with age but still legible. As I picked up the invitation, a chill ran down my spine. It was for a party that had taken place years ago, long before the Thompsons had even moved into the house. Confused, I turned the invitation over in my hands, searching for any clues as to why it had been left for me. That's when I noticed the handwriting on the back, the same handwriting from the note that had been left on the welcome mat. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I realized that whoever had left the note had been in this attic, had been watching and waiting for me to find the invitation. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the staircase below, growing louder and closer with each passing moment. Panic surged through me as I realized that someone else was in the house, someone who had been following my every move. Heart pounding, I bolted from the attic and raced down the stairs, the invitation clutched tightly in my hand. As I reached the bottom, I collided with Mr. Thompson, who was just returning home from his evening out. Breathless and shaking, I tried to explain what had happened, but he only looked at me with confusion, insisting that no one else had been in the house. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching, someone who had left behind a forgotten invitation as a chilling reminder of their presence.